welcome to the Big Ben Show with me, Lester Holloway and Alex Watson. We've got lots of politics, black politics coming up for you in the next hour. Of course, this was the week when the political parties all launched their manifestos. I'm sure that not many people, apart from the politicos and those within the Westminster Village, might be reading them, but they do matter because they, whoever gets into government, whether they are a major party or minor parties, this is the programme that they are going to be delivering, or at least starting off delivering before they renege on their promises. Of course, the manifestos, certainly when I looked through them earlier this week, seem to be, or race equality seems to be absent from it. Even the Labour Party manifesto, but they have launched a BAME, or Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic manifesto, which they launched in Leicester City yesterday. The Lib Dems launched their manifesto. Again, there was virtually no mention of race equality in their main manifesto, but they also have launched a BAME manifesto, which was launched earlier today. And of course, the other sort of big development as well, as far as black politics is concerned, is that a study has shown that the number of BAME general election candidates is going up, but when you compare black, African and Caribbean candidates to Asian candidates, well, there are proportionately far more Asians. So what's going on? Is it the case that African and Caribbean political aspirants are being ignored, or is it just the case that the communities are not that interested in politics? So, you know, where are the candidates going to come from? We'll be exploring all this and more. Do call in and let us know what you think. You can call in. The number will be appearing on the screen throughout the hour, 0208 808 0693. Coming up later on in the show, very shortly, we'll be speaking to the investigator, Andrew Mohammed, who is an educator and a black historian, African historian as well. We'll also be speaking later on in the programme to Lee Jasper from Operation Black Vote after the launch of their poster campaign featuring Sol Campbell, Tiny Temper and others. We'll be showing you some images, and we'll also be showing you a clip of the launch of that campaign a little later on. And also we'll be speaking in the final half hour or so to Professor Paul Reynolds, who's a Lib Dem, aspiring candidate to be the London Mayor of London, I suppose, and also a candidate in the general election in West Ham. So we'll be speaking to him a little later on as well. But Alex, how was your week?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad actually, busy as usual, but it was productive. So. Yeah.
Now, what did you make of the manifestos? All the parties have put their programmes on the table now.
Yeah, well, I haven't had a time to interrogate them in any great depth because, you know, life goes on and stuff like that. But it does seem that Labour have kind of highlighted that they're going to do a bit more for black and ethnic minorities, something in the workplaces, discrimination and that kind of thing. Tories don't seem to have touched much on black and ethnic minorities at all.
Well, it's interesting actually that the Conservative Party, I think their manifesto was 83 pages long. There's only one picture of anybody who's of African or Caribbean descent there, and there's only one mention of race inequality, which is that to do with policing. So they want to have extra programmes to boost black police recruits.
Well, they would probably say it's because colour doesn't matter, wouldn't it? I can just see them. I can just see it now.
Yeah, but if it matters for one issue in criminal justice, why doesn't it matter for the others? Why is it the case that the Conservatives, we should have really had a Conservative on to answer this, the only issue that they seem to be interested in?
But the thing is, you have to, if they were to, you know, plaster, you know, black people around their manifesto and stuff like that, to be honest, it would just be tokenism, wouldn't it? You know, so... Well,
I mean, that's an interesting issue. Maybe actually we'll start with that with our very special guest, Andrew Mohammed, the investigator. You spend a lot of time in schools, talking to young people, inspiring them to be great and also to know more about their history. This point that we've just been talking about here about tokenism, what do you feel about that?
Well, I totally agree with what you stated originally, to be honest with you. When I saw the news and I saw the different manifestos being presented, I noticed the absence of the African or Caribbean community. And it hits me because as young people, they don't appreciate that it is, if they were the images there, that may be tokenism. As far as they're concerned, we're not in the political picture at all.
But to what extent do the images matter? Because surely what matters is what's written down in black and white.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the point I made earlier that as far as young people, which is mainly the people I work with, as far as they're concerned, they have no dreams of being in politics, full stop, because they just don't see themselves, whether it's imagery or in words, they just don't see themselves being allocated any type of coverage at all. They see themselves being voiceless.
Can I just say something? When I said about being colourblind, and I suppose what I'm trying to say in a deeper sense is that I don't expect any better of these people.
Totally.
Do you understand what I mean?
Totally.
So when I don't see black people there, I don't sit there going, why don't we have more there? I think to myself, we should be doing something else.
More substance.
Because why are we constantly bemoaning the fact that we know these people don't want us?
Yeah.
In that sense, that's
That's
how I look at it. So I understand it from a young person's perspective. You don't see yourself represented. You know, you don't feel an affinity, and you feel excluded from the conversation. So yeah, I suppose we should be pushing more for it. But the fact is, we've got race on the agenda a lot, I believe, and it's being ignored by these people, willfully ignored. So I kind of feel like I ignore them.
The sad issue, though, sister, you made some great points there, but the sad issue is this, that we had a little political debate among some youngsters, aged approximately between 14 to 21. And to be honest with you, we don't appreciate how the media has filled their minds with their so-called political beliefs. You know, all they're really talking about is about the immigration situation. While we're letting foreigners come into our country, take our jobs, whatever.
And who is a foreigner as well? Because sometimes the word foreigner or immigrant gets applied to people who are second, third, fourth generation. How many generations do you have to live in before you're not an immigrant?
And to be honest with you, I was quite shocked, to be honest with you, and disappointed, because the way I was thinking, I was listening to, and they were being honest. That's what I loved about it. And they were being very honest. But however, if I thought to myself, if I closed my eyes and took myself back to the 70s listening to that same conversation, it'd be like listening to the National Front. But yet it was black boys and black girls expressing these same views. So somehow the media or whatever it may be has literally drifted our young boys and girls into thinking very right-wing without even appreciating.
But isn't it a catch-22 situation? Because Operation Black Vote at the moment is saying there's only 14 days to go to registration. Now, as Alex has mentioned there, a lot of young people, particularly of black and ethnic minority sort of heritage, not particularly interested in politics. If we're not interested in politics, then we're not going to get involved, and we're not going to change it. How can that circle be broken?
Well, I personally make a massive call out to all so-called black leaders in our community. I think that really we need to come together and have an operation of self-help, self-reliance, because you see, it's not about going to the with a begging bowl to the government saying, look, we need handouts. I think that's what you're talking about in terms of tokenism. I think we need a new type of discussion when it comes to politics, and it's more about what's our agenda in our black community. And if these political parties buy into our agenda, then we can work with that political party. And I think that our leaders, regardless of their political persuasions, need to come together and set out a black agenda that we in the community can support.
Can I just ask you a quick question about those kids, children? How did you find that the dialogue had changed once having, you know, gone through one of your courses or a day with you?
Well, that's a very good question. In fact, what we've done, we took it a step further. I do a lot of work with Brenda King and the African Caribbean Diversity, which is a great organisation, it's a charity that work with our young boys and girls from the ages of 14 to about 18, 19 year old. And she realised there was a lack of political awareness amongst our youth. So what we've done, we just came out last week, to be honest with you, we took a group of those young people out to Belgium, to Brussels, to start thinking not just about UK politics, but European politics, and see where they placed in it. We made them meet various brothers and sisters in the European diaspora. And
of course, there's hardly any black MEPs anywhere in Europe, which is quite extraordinary.
But we don't appreciate that we're living on an island. And with that island, comes an island mentality that England is the world. It's not. And our aim is not just try and get our people thinking more political, but open up their horizons, open up their agenda, open up their possibilities. And when we took them on this trip, and it's a political awareness trip, they were blown. And from being on an experience like that, that's when they said, I want to be involved in politics
because
now.
Young black people in Europe, I feel, are much more aware
than
our kids
much
here.
Much more aware, sister.
100% more.
100%. And it was eye-opener, not just for me, but they were just blown. And now, by seeing that they have a place and a political view, because in truth, in a nutshell, it's our political weakness in this country that sentence our people to unemployment, bad housing, the worst education, and a foreign policy that may not be in the interest of us and our community worldwide.
But it's also economic as well. It's not just political, it's economic, because the two go hand in
100%.
hand together, don't they? And we're always at the bottom of the ladder in terms of economic and financial access and stability. So therefore we don't have a mandate or the power to often, you know, lobby these people or advocate on behalf of our own communities when we're in problems. To, you know, so that's where you find, I think, a depression that sets in, where people feel a bit hopeless and helpless, and they just disengage from the whole thing.
100%. And can I just add to that, because you know you've hit the nail on the head, okay? But when talking to our youth, and that's my 100%, you know, mission, aim, and purpose is to really connect with the youth. They are very dissatisfied with the political agenda right now, and how it's portrayed on TV. It's like everyone's in it for themselves, and that the legislative practices that are passed and the political acts that are passed is all to benefit the so-called rich. They see themselves as being voices. I'm going to just add one very quickly, is that when they see people like yourself, Lester, I'm going to be honest with you, when they see people like yourself, who many of them answered that you was in the political agenda, you was in that political machine, and if you was turned off, for whatever reason, then they're going to think, well, if that's a brother in our community that stands up for our community, and if he stood away and said, you know what, I'm not really down with whatever, I don't know what issues it was, that's another sign for them to switch off. Like, this is not for us.
I have to say I'm far from unique there, because I think that the history of UK politics is black activists getting involved, being very enthusiastic for 1, 2, 3, maybe up to 10 years. Maybe sometimes I've actually seen activists who have been involved for 30 years. We actually had one who resigned recently from the Labour Party. When they get to a certain sort of stage of banging their head against a brick wall, then they sort of just say, look, you know, this really isn't working, and then the next generation come in young, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and the circle starts all over again.
And that's what turns them off, though. They see that, and they're not foolish.
Yes.
And that's why I said we need a program.
But don't you think things are changing? I mean, this election, sorry, Alex, we might see almost a doubling of the black and Asian MPs from 27, as it was in the last Parliament, to over 40 in just 22 days' time. That surely is making a difference.
It's making a difference on the surface level.
On the surface.
But in terms of what's happening, in terms of the system, so like the economical program for our youth, the educational program for our youth and whatever, okay, it's not really filtering down, to be honest with you.
And also I think that we've got this kind of, there was a debate on LBC, and I'm sure we're talking about it in a little bit, this kind of colourblind thing where I think even black people that are so-called doing fairly well for themselves, it's almost like not a black or white thing. It's almost like a them and us thing.
Yes.
You know. So therefore, once you've managed to break through a barrier, you know,
don't open doors for the.
Yeah, you're kind of there in a bubble, and you're not really reaching back, or you're not really mentoring or doing anything. Some people are, you know, and maybe they're doing it, you know, below the surface. But I feel like the actual engagement and the dialogue is not above board.
Totally.
You know, so you find people doing well, but they kind of keep their politics, you know, to themselves. Or they don't express it, you know, in order to you know, keep surviving, so to speak.
But also what I found, I mean, what you said is, again, 100% correct, but what I found is that many times if there's no progress for them to buy into, then they just see, well, spat me going for myself, you know, as Lester is, again, a good example, because he is, you know.
I feel like Spotlight is, the Spotlight should be on you, Andrew, as our guest.
Because what you said was so fundamental, you know. I said, I run my own company, and we go and do work all over the country, working with young people in programs. And once I found that I had made enough so-called finance for myself to be, you know, looked after, my family, my community, the next thing I knew I had to do was open up an academy to give back to our community. So we opened up an academy called the Westside Young Leaders Academy, which again, as I was saying, Lester came down straight away,
fantastic
helped
experience.
out, worked with the young people. And that's what we're looking to do. We need a self-help. And we didn't go to the government with a begging bowl. We said, this is something we must do in our community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Buying it on that level.
And so if you've got a view about this, I'm sure you want to join the conversation. So don't be shy, pick up the phone, 020-808-0693, and the number will be on the screen. So do put a question to the investigator, Andrew Mohammed, and myself and Alex as well. Now, what we're going to show you is a clip of the launch of Operation Black Votes poster campaign, which has been all over the newspapers, whichever newspaper you get this morning. There'll be photos there of Sol Campbell and Tinie Tempah and others. So we're just going to show you now. We've got the images there on the screen. There's Tinie Tempah there, and the Paralympian as well, Ade, I've forgotten his surname, and David Harewood, of course, a great actor. But let's see now whether we can run that clip of the launch of Operation Black Votes poster campaign.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Please, tell us about the campaign.
Well, this is a great campaign. We've got the most creative minds in the UK, from Saatchi & Saatchi, the photographer Rankin, and black celebrities, Sol Campbell, Adi Peten, and David Harewood, the Hollywood star, and Tinie Tempah, of course. They've all come together to bring their services, basically to encourage and inspire African, Asian and Caribbeans to register to vote and to use the vote. Because we know that many Africans in particular are not registered. You know, we've got just a few days, 5 days left to register to vote. So tell your listeners, your viewers, that we must register to vote. If we want a voice, if we want to make sure that our society is more inclusive, more representative, we've got to register to vote.
With regards to people on the ground, because, you know, sometimes not everyone will get to central London, whatever, local community groups and organisations. How are you guys been able to penetrate and target them?
That's a good question, because, you know, we've been travelling around the country with a 42-foot bus, travelling the length and breadth of the country with our team, registering individuals to vote. And it's been so empowering. They come onto the bus, often cynical, and we talk to them, we inspire them, and they register. And in that registering, they're making a declaration that they demand to be listened to.
Well, yes, because definitely that is something that a lot of young people feel that they're not heard and they're not listened to. So please just give a last caption to, especially the younger audience, as to why they should vote.
Well, you know, if we don't vote, we're not listened to. If we're not listened to, we can't have a future that embraces our talent, embraces our skills. Use the OBV app, register to vote, and make sure you have a powerful black voice.
Thank you very much, and I think everyone should get on and register now.
That was, of course, Simon Woolley from Operation Black Vote, and hopefully, Touchwood will also be hearing from Lee Jasper from the Operation Black Vote campaign as well. Andrew, listening to that, Simon Woolley there saying, if we don't vote, we're not listened to. Surely that makes sense.
It does make sense, you know, 100%. But I still go back to my original point that, you know, for our, especially in the black community, we need our own agenda. We need to put together a political agenda that we are putting ourselves first and foremost on that agenda, and we will then put that agenda to the political parties and whether.
But we can have an agenda, but it's about whether anybody listens. For example, next Thursday, a coalition of anti-racist organisations calling themselves CORE are launching a race equality manifesto. Now, I remember the last Black Manifesto. In fact, actually, I contributed to the media section of it, and you know, a lot of work went into that from a lot of anti-racist groups, from a lot of refugee groups, from you know, a lot of expertise. I think it had minimal impact on the political parties. So, you know, you talk about getting the black leaders together. I absolutely, you know, hear what you're saying. You know, forming a black agenda, but you can do that. How does that then translate into mainstream politics?
Because I personally believe that when those leaders come together, the issue after putting together that agenda, so to speak, is to get the minds of our people to be on board with that agenda.
To be behind,
power,
yes.
Respects power. And so we may do it with the elite few, but it's about selling it to the masses. And I think that if the masses buy into that agenda, then the political parties will have to listen to it.
Can I just ask you a question? It's slightly off topic, but it's on the topic. Do you feel that, obviously you do workshops, you teach black history and all sorts of things to children, but I believe that there's actually a lack of knowledge amongst the adults that have the children, and I think that's one of the problems that we have.
Totally.
So I think that until we have an education process within the community, I think we're going to be always suffering from this deficit of engagement.
100%, because you see...
A lot of 100%s from me today.
I'm in love right now. I'm in love right now with what I'm hearing, because you see, what you're saying, I can't argue. You know, it's the point, because when I do work in schools, and I say to the schools that, you know, we could do great workshops with the children, but once they leave that school, it's all undone if the parents are not on board, you see. And so with many of the schools I work with, they allow me to work with the parents as well. And politically, it's the same situation. You know, it's about giving the young people a vision, but also we need a second arm that can work with the parents, because it's the parents that really the children are going to look for in terms of following their examples. Many of our communities support Labour, not because they know about Labour, their parents supported Labour. Exactly. And so by educating the masses, i.e. the parents, the adults, you're going to have a knock-on effect with the children.
And what difference does it make? I understand, obviously, about learning about our roots is part of empowerment. You feel empowered through that. But how does that really translate into the impact that the black community can make on the political process?
Well, I personally come from the standpoint that democracy and ignorance are not companions. Yeah, we talk about living in a democracy in our society. But if the people that are underneath that democracy are illiterate or ignorant, then the government is not going to be called to answer to. And so by educating those youth, and or especially in our community, if we educate them into who they are, their potential, what they can achieve, believe it or not, that'll translate into a political paradigm as well. Okay, it's about knowledge of self. And once you know who you are, not just historically, but know yourself in terms of your capabilities, then you will know, is this a government that's looking after my potential and my capabilities?
As you just said that, sorry to keep, I thought about people like Marcus Garvey, people like Malcolm X, who have kind of done that and obviously been shot down for it. Do you think if we were to have another movement where a kind of empowerment movement, we had the Black Panther kind of movement, and every time there is a movement to educate, mass educate the people, there's a kind of counterculture that comes along to suppress it, whether it's been the Ku Klux Klan, whether it's been civil rights. So
it's going to happen, sis. But one thing I learned from history is that we don't learn from history.
Right.
Meaning that if we studied those past movements and the greats that they've done, we've got to look at the mistakes and the errors that we may have to look for in terms of our particular present-day building. And so we cannot afford to build any movement that's based on the charismatic personality of one person. That's what I'm talking about, educating masses. We can do workshops locally all over the place, okay? So there we can't get away. There may be a leader personality, but our belief, our structure, and our mission must not be based on a personality, just because he's a magnetic personality. We've got to build information and education that gives right across the board.
You're talking about structures, and how do we build those structures? What, from the grassroots up?
From the grassroots. It's got to be from the grassroots.
But how do we? I mean, but there's a very practical problem here, which is that we're all working 9 to 5, or we're struggling to make ends meet. It's very, very hard to do that because people are saying, I've got other priorities. How do you?
I know.
How do you get around that?
But until we understand that there's got to be a sacrifice that's got to be made, okay, and that sacrifice can sometimes only be a few hours a week. It can make a massive change. And we are entering into an era right now, brother, whereby we're becoming very materialistic. It's all about what can I get out of it right now. And that short-term thinking is what centers a lot of our community to political and economical death. And we need a new, and I personally start with the younger generation. If we can really get them to appreciate and understand, make a sacrifice for your community, and guess what? In a few years' time, you're going to benefit directly from that sacrifice.
That's funny you should say that, because I wrote a note here saying, community, if you forego, can you succeed? And I think that's what we have. I think we have a lot of people that look at the kind of terrain and go, I've got one life and I want to do the best I can. And we've also got a cult of celebrity. Like you said, we've had a media onslaught of kind of cult of celebrity. So we kind of believe in this individualism. We kind of believe in this I can, and we forget the we.
The we.
And the structures that the frameworks that we're up against are will come together to suppress us in that kind of a way. So I think we do need to think long term.
We've got to have a long term plan and
think about their children, but also maybe take a step back from being selfish.
That's exactly
as individuals. It's hard, because we're all, they say everyone's got their price, and often that's what happens.
Talking about the cult of celebrity, of course, the Operation Black Vote campaign that we've just seen features celebrities, the likes of Sol Campbell, Tiny Tampa, and David Harewood, with whitened up faces
Yeah.
with a certain message that, you know, if you don't vote, then in a way politics
Come up,
becomes
yeah.
white. What do you make of that campaign? And is it striking the right balance? Is it hitting the right notes? Is it hitting the ebony or the ivory notes?
Yeah. Nice picture of Tiny Temper.
I believe our condition today is that we need a multi-pronged approach. So I believe that in one respect, it's going to be helpful. It's going to hit those people who may, you know, see it and say, wow, I need to, you know, register my vote. But I know the young brothers and sisters on the estates might be okay, that we're going to need more than just a picture of a celebrity in a whited up face. But I'm not going to diss it, because I think that anything that we can do to get our people politically aware, then fantastic. I'm going to be very honest with you. The man that turned me on to politics per se was Bernie Grant, to be honest with you. To me, we had someone that stood up, regardless of political parties, he stood up for our community, and he gave us a vision. And I remember I was young when Bernie Grant was coming into action, and I love the way that he spoke truth, and he spoke up unapologetically to the issues that concerned our community. And to me, that is what we lack on the political atmosphere right now. It's those type of politicians that are not afraid to stand up and speak for the voiceless.
I think at that time when Bernie Grant got into politics, though, to be fair, society was a bit more. I'm not saying society is not polarised now, because it is, but it's much less visible, and it's much less overt.
More subtle now,
right?
isn't it?
So he had an overt enemy to fight.
Yeah.
Now it's much more covert, it's much more subtle.
Yeah.
So you know, when we come out and say this is happening, a lot of people go, no, it's not. A lot of times people don't believe that we're suffering certain oppressions at the moment, because we've got Tiny Tempers and we've got a few celebrities, and Beyonce and Jay-Z are the top people. So they've
got a black president.
And we've got a black president. so we're fighting a very subtle, covert system sometimes. And I think that's the difference between people like Bernie Grant and, you know, when like Diane Abbott, who came up through that era of politics, and what we see now. And young people, some of them are engaged. We had like Yahaha on the show a couple of weeks ago. And I think young people are very engaged in politics in one sense, because you've got so much information. We're in the technological age. You know, they're being, you know, we're having kids being radicalised under our noses, and nobody is aware of how it's happening. So people are engaged, but they don't see the connect between them and the process and how that changes anything. They see the system as impotent.
Yes.
In terms of engendering change. And if the system is not impotent, in fact, if we could utilise it, could empower us, that's what we need to connect.
And that's what's missing.
Yeah.
We're not tuning in to the mind waves of those youth, to make them see that, you know what, by getting involved politically, you can make changes down the line that's going to benefit not just you, but people right across the board. I personally believe that people of colour and women are better placed to speak the kind of language that we're talking about right now, because they know what it's like to live under a sexist society, a racist society, a disadvantaged society. And I personally believe that the greatest leaders will come out of that poor society, those who literally experienced those type of things. So we need this message to get to that community, people of colour and women especially.
And to organise
they will
as well.
speak from the heart.
Absolutely.
And I think those youth will tune into those sound waves.
And to organise as well, absolutely,
Exactly.
Politically.
Exactly.
But just to sort of round up, you know, do you have like a 3-point plan for what we should do? Because obviously, you know, going back to the Black Panthers had, I think, a 10-point plan, didn't they?
Right, we're going to sort it out now.
We're going to sort it out now, absolutely. So, you know, what really needs to be done in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, I'll just say one or two very quick things. One, we need people like yourselves to go behind closed doors, people like, you know, Lee Jasper, Simon Woolley, Ray Lewis, yourself, and various other, I'll call them political giants, political geniuses, okay, to go behind closed doors, yeah? Put away
I've been behind closed doors. Got kicked out again.
Go behind the closed door. Put together an agenda. You know, that is sincere. A plan of action. 'Cause you,
I think it involves you know, black figures working with each other, and this is always the problem. You know, both across party lines and that's sometimes within parties. It's very, very difficult.
I'm writing down what you say there. So
to
put together a plan. I'm
put together a plan. Okay, number two?
Number two is that then we need community people like myself to literally put together a program that we can send into schools. into colleges, into universities. We can have a tour up and down the country using the rappers, using the poets, using the spoken word artists, using the educational, motivational speakers like myself, might be okay. That we can learn from your plan and put it in our language and sell that vision to the youth. I personally believe that religion caused a revolution, a positive mental revolution that can have beneficial effects up and down the country for years to come.
Okay, and do you have a number 3?
And number 3? No.
Just that revolution changed the whole system from
those
top to bottom.
Those two things
Yeah.
would be the main, and then we get the grassroots organisations to get involved in as well.
Okay, I've written that down. So watch this space, people.
Absolutely.
Watch this space.
And how can people get in touch with you, Andrew?
Okay, you can get in touch with me. My website, they call me The Investigator. So my website is theinvestigator.org.uk, or they can hit me up on Facebook, Andrew Muhammad, MUHAMMAD, or they can hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, The Investigator 555, or Instagram, _Investigator 555.
Okay, I'll have to ask you later what the 555 means, because I'm intrigued. Actually, let's just tell us quickly now.
Okay, it's the science of numerology. If I said to you 666,
Yes, well, look, the sign of Beelzebub, Diablo.
In numerology,
Cameron.
In
Boris
numerology,
Johnson.
555 is the savior, the Jesus, the Neo of the Matrix.
Right.
And so 555 means the coming of greatness and peace and contentment. And I personally believe that we are born to be 555s and never the 666.
Okay, that's that's one to definitely concentrate over, and I'm going to definitely do some research. Absolutely, yeah. Well, the investigator always brings knowledge to the table. Right, we're going to take a break now. Afterwards, we're going to be coming back with a sort of signed-up politician, Professor Paul Reynolds, who wants to be the Lib Dem mayoral candidate for London. And one of the things that we'll be asking him as well is that the Lib Dems launched their main manifesto, almost absent of race equality. They also launched a black and ethnic minority manifesto, but their black and ethnic minority group do not like the manifesto and are saying that they weren't consulted. So is this yet another foul-up on the part of Nick Clegg's party or not? We will be asking him that and a lot more. So stay with us and join us after the break.
Communities, do you think that there's enough happening, or
technology, the totality of what makes man is what we'll bring to you here on this sponge. We'll give you the information that you need, from business to economy to politics to technology. And that's what we do here on this sponge, from the beginning to the end. And that is why we are here. Keep watching this sponge from Ben Television. And today, I'll be your host.
This is Ben Television. My name is Kayode Ogundamisi. It's your program, Politics with KO, Thursdays on this channel, Sky 182. Don't miss the debates by Nigerians and friends of Nigeria on issues surrounding Nigeria from around the world. My name is Kayode Ogundamisi.
you are
The woman. The woman. The woman.
Welcome back to the Big Ben Show with me, Lester Holloway, and Alex Watson. We were just talking to the investigator, Andrew Mohammed, very inspiring guest. Now, one of the things that we talked about was the Operation Black Vote campaign, poster campaign to get people to register to vote. And we showed you a little clip earlier of the launch. Now, on the line, we should have Lee Jasper from Operation Black Vote. Good afternoon, Lee.
Afternoon, Lester.
Greetings, I'm here with Alex Watson as well,
Hi,
my
Lee.
co-presenter. Now, we saw a little clip of the launch of the campaign, the poster campaign, just a little earlier in the show. In a nutshell, what is it all about?
Really encouraging black and ethnic minority voters to get back on the electoral register and make sure they're registered to vote. It's only a matter of days to go, which we see now on the April the 20th deadline on Sunday, for people to get back on the electoral register. We developed in partnership with Saatchi and Saatchi, who we're very grateful for their contribution towards this campaign, which came free of charge. A hard-hitting, controversial campaign that seeks to point out that if black people are not registered to vote, then the representative nature of British democracy will lack that diversity, and it's really important for people to register to vote and to take part in the forthcoming election.
Yeah, now we heard from Simon Woolley earlier, who was saying that if you don't vote, you're not listened to. And I understand there's just 14 days to go till the end of the month to register to vote. But I wanted to ask you all sort of two questions really, which are related. One is that what difference will it really make if we all register to vote? Will it make a big impact on the system?
Let me be clear. The deadline for voter registration is the 20th of April.
Oh, the 20th.
4 days to go.
Oh.
At the end of April.
Right.
It's very important that people are aware of what the deadline is, and it is this Sunday. Secondly, in relation to your question about does it make a difference, it makes a huge difference.
Good question.
I've sat, as no doubt you have yourself, Lester, in strategy campaigning groups where you begin to map out who are the important constituencies if you're seeking to get elected in a local or a national election. And I can tell you that, in all honesty, the community with least registered to vote, least likely to vote, come last in a list of priority groups that begins with those that are most likely to vote and most likely to turn out in big numbers down to the least. Is an order of political priority of importance. And so those who vote get their matters on the agenda, they have influence and leverage with the political parties, and those that don't are simply forgotten.
Lee, it's Alex. I was just thinking about people registering to vote. Maybe some people don't register because they're trying to hide from the government, perhaps. But my thinking was, thinking about something like ethnic minority monitoring. For the last, I don't know over how many years, we've had things like you have to put your ethnicity down, and companies have had equal opportunities and diversity policies to say, that say we should have more equality. But I don't see, in the main, these things of having a massive impact on the communities which they're supposed to represent. So the government can get a lot of data on us, but what do they do with that data? So my thinking is, yes, I see the need to register to vote, and I hear your point, but isn't there a counter side to it, which may mean that we're giving up all our information for little return?
Well, it depends what's done with that information. I mean, what is suggested is done with that information. Are people suggesting that it's used in some way to prevent our communities getting employment or to target them in some other way? I hear the argument all the time. Actually, what you're pointing to is a political failure of institutions to tackle race equality. When I was Director of Equality for London, I used to monitor everything. And that allowed me to say, I need fast-track development forces for black women in order to make up the balance of lack of representation of black women in the top 5% earners in the GLA. It allowed me to say that I'm only going to target my recruitment efforts of the black community or women or people with disabilities at its most pernicious. But where that information is actually fed through to change policy, recruitment policy, to change the budget allocation around recruitment and employment training and promotion within your workforce, where it's used to improve services, so that you begin to say, okay, we're providing Meals on Wheels, but we're providing sausage and mash, and 98% of our customers are African Muslims. We need to change the menu. So I don't think it's as simplistic as that. I think what you're pointing to is a political failure. Because the lazy approach to diversity is, oh, let's collect the information, but then very little is done with that information. It's like it doesn't impact upon what happens next.
Lee Jasper,
it becomes discredited.
Yeah, the clock is slightly against us, but thank you so much for calling. And of course, you know, one of your points was that the extent to which we vote as a community influences where we are on the political agenda. So thank you so much for joining us from Operation Black Vote. And just quickly turning to our next guest, Paul Reynolds from the Liberal Democrats. You're running in West Ham, in fact, and you're also putting yourself forward to be the mayoral candidate for London as well. Just starting with that, what makes you the right person for London?
Well, London needs significant reform. I feel that there's a lot of complacency in the services provided to Londoners. And for example, in transport and housing, we have getting close to a catastrophic situation with overcrowding on the tube, and everybody in London knows the problems in housing. But the moment the issues are being just tinkered with, there's no sort of pan-London plan to deal with the problems of housing and transport, and to some extent policing. And significantly, people want a public service from politicians to solve problems. And I kind of sense that people are a little bit kind of fed up with sort of professional spin-based politics. So, you know, I feel that a stronger set of policies for serious reform in London are really what the public are looking for. So that motivates me to go forward.
Absolutely. Now, of course, you're running in West Ham, which has a very high African population.
It does, yes.
I've often seen you at events, you know, surrounding the black and ethnic minority community. But looking at your London website, there's really no mention I can find of, you know, ethnicity and representing the particular concerns of black communities. So, you know, how high up the agenda is that for you?
Well, it's kind of one thing at a time. I mean, the first thing that needs to be done from my point of view is to set out the key policies on the main big, you know, headline problems: housing, transport, police, and economy.
But London is almost 40% ethnic minority.
Sure, but step by one thing at a time. I mean, there is no other candidate in the history of the mayoral race. I mean, the race to become the candidate and then the race to become the mayor. There is no other candidate that has ever set out at a very, very, very early stage a 40-page website with specific problem-solving proposals all the way through. So that's the first job. And then there are other things. It's not to say that there are something as a low priority, but you know, these are the things that have to be set out first, and then step by step. I mean, the mayoral election is in May 2016, and the process for selecting the candidates of the three main parties hasn't even started. So we have to start somewhere. That's where we started. And then we've been doing a lot of work on questions of policies which are specific to different ethnic groups. We've been working on issues to do with disabled access for TfL transport services, and a number of other issues to do with the elderly who are lonely and poor in certain parts of London. There's a lot of...
So just give us an example of you mentioned you're working on policies to do with black and ethnic minority communities. So just give us an example.
Sure. Well, one of the key things is, which we will be setting out in the future, is issues to do with stop and search and policing, for example, because some sections of the community are unfairly treated when it comes to the approach of the police on sort of day-to-day policing. And it's something, you know, the London white middle class would not know about this problem, and you have to experience it to understand the difficulty. It's not that the police are kind of, every single policeman is racist, or, that it's a kind of vendetta against ethnic minorities, but on a day-to-day basis, it's really unreasonable. The second thing is to do with we're looking carefully at issues close to my heart, which is the treatment of people of Islamic faith in the UK. And there does need to be a serious rethink about how the government policies towards extremism are being dealt with.
Okay, so how many percentage of you, did you say, of Londoners are ethnic minorities?
Just under 40%.
Under 40%, okay. So you said the key issues are housing, transport, policing, and what was the other one?
The London economy.
The London economy. As a black woman living in London, I would say, I experience the housing problems, the transport problems, the policing problems, and the economic problems. And I think that the fact that the issues for the black community are always seen as not a priority is half of the problem. To us, it is a priority, because a lot of young people cannot afford to get on the transport because they don't have a job, because 59% of young black kids are unemployed, and that's increased under the last government and the mayor. So when you say that we will do something at some point and it's not the priority, you're disenfranchising a lot of Londoners.
Well, it's worse than that. It's worse than you say. I mean, 30% of ethnic minority people in London who have degrees are either unemployed or on low-paid jobs.
Yeah, but black youth are disproportionately unemployed. This is a point.
Yes,
where you have disproportionality, I don't think Alex was suggesting that there aren't other groups in society that are unemployed. All youth are, disproportionately unemployed, but actually black youth are more disproportionately unemployed than youth as a whole.
Yes.
So surely that needs some specific action to tackle that.
And the fact that 30% of graduates who are black are unemployed as well, that is a significant problem. So the issues for us are very, very prevalent, and they're being ignored by all people. Do you understand? It's very, very annoying. And it's always, we've got to deal with policing. We're the ones that are affected by policing. It's got to do with housing. We're the ones that are affected by this more than anybody else. But yet our voices are constantly ignored.
Yes, well, I talked to my constituents in West Ham in the parliamentary election about these difficulties. And a part of the issue is police reform. The police reform which I've been setting out is not just a question of kind of somebody's unreasonably stopped on the street. It goes a lot deeper than that. I mean, there's so much police corruption, and some of the corruption which has been uncovered and still being uncovered after the Stephen Lawrence case is deeply shocking. And it's not only the kind of micro problem of somebody being stopped on the street, but there's a deeper problem within the police as to how they're structured, how the recruitment system works, and how they're funded, and to some extent how the police are trained. It really, it really makes me angry the extent to which there is complacency across the political spectrum about how the police, the effectiveness of the police in dealing with ethnic minorities.
To move on slightly, because this week we've seen the launch of all political parties' manifestos. So there's a two-headed question here. One is, in a nutshell, and very briefly, your impression of all the political parties' manifestos, including the Lib Dems. And the second part of this is that the Lib Dems launched their manifesto. In fact, all of the parties, race equality has been a very, very low part of all the political parties' manifestos. Now, the Lib Dems have launched a BME or BAME manifesto today, but I've certainly heard from a senior member of the ethnic minority Liberal Democrats group that said that they weren't consulted about that. They feel that the document is weak, which is a little bit embarrassing if the BME group within the party are not supporting it. So first of all, your overall impression about all political parties' manifestos, and secondly, if you could say something as well about whether the Lib Dems, when the Lib Dems will actually start to get it right on race.
I think the sort of general criticism that one can make of all of the manifestos, there's a little bit sort of, long shopping lists of money which people are promising to spend, and you sort of, I think, the average voter sort of gets one party promises to spend, 10 million on something, and then somebody comes up and says, I'm going to spend 12 million. I don't think people are particularly impressed by that type of sort of bidding war. I think a lot of people in their day-to-day lives feel that a lot of the problems are kind of systemic. I was at a hustings meeting last night, and people were talking about spending on London transport and problems of disability and this type of thing. The difficulty is that the different parties are outbidding each other on how much they're going to spend to improve access to London transport stations. I mean, Transport for London wasted £900 million in cash on these PFI deals and contracts that go wrong and that type of thing. So I mean, the systems are as important as the kind of spending promises. That's my sort of general criticism.
Yeah.
Some also, long lists of spending are a bit boring.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I just need to apologise for the loss of picture earlier during the break, so apologies for that. So we're just coming up towards the end of the show. You had a quick question, Alex?
No, I was just thinking about when Boris Johnson came in for mayor last time, there was a promise of mentoring and stuff for young people. I don't know how successful or impactful that's been, but would you think of continuing or escalating something like that?
Just very briefly.
Yeah, well, there's an important role to play for businesses, BAME-owned businesses, as well as other businesses, to mentor people at schools. Let me just say this. I mean, some of the public schools in parts of London where there's a high BAME community are really, the quality of education is really lamentable.
Yes.
And that's, one of the really important things we have to tackle.
Absolutely. On that note, unfortunately, the clock is against us, so would like this conversation to have gone on a little longer, but we've only got so much time. So thank you so much for joining us. Paul Reynolds, Lib Dem candidate in West Ham and mayoral candidate for London when that contest eventually kicks off. The other candidates running in West Ham include the Labour MP Lynn Brown and also the Conservative Festus Akin Bossoy, who we've previously had on this programme. We've been trying to get Lynn Brown for a little while, but almost giving up hope on that one. Thank you also to Lee Jasper for joining us. On the phone to the Simon Willey from Operation Black Vote for the clip there that we showed at the launch of his poster campaign, and also the investigator Andrew Mohammed for giving us his breakdown of the general election. Myself and Alex will be back next week at 1 o'clock, so we will see you then for more Black Politics in the countdown to the general election. Have a great week.